Hello and welcome to Mr. Clark After Dark, everyone. My name is Lucas Clark and I am a certified educator with Alberta Education and the Alberta Teachers Association. All conversations and interactions exchanged is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. In no way does the content discussed intend to be in violation of the ATA Code of Conduct or to deliberately target any individual student, teacher, or to belittle or demean the profession in any way. If you have something that you would like me to discuss or have a story of your own to share, please reach out at mrclarkafterdark@gmail.com, or you can also send me a direct message on Instagram at mrclarkafterdark. Hope you all enjoy the show, and please do not forget to subscribe. Today I have on Shannon Dube for part 2 of our conversation. Shannon is currently the president of the ATA Local 48 and is also the Elementary Numeracy Coordinator for the Fort McMurray Public School Division. On part 2 here, Shannon and I discussed building relationships and being less awkward, the excited to see you tool, setting boundaries, how things grate on you over time, what the most stressful part of teaching is, how parents have become more demanding, how it is hard to be on all the time, how students do still have a good side, teaching high school as a young teacher and handling the smaller age gap, the emotional labor of defending both your career choice and subject choice, how you are thrown into teaching overnight after university, irrational crying, how teachers end up teaching subjects nothing close to what they originally studied, the difficulties of making humanities courses hands-on, deciding on a master's program, and how being an administrator seems as fun as stepping on rusty nails, helping teachers stand up for themselves, and, of course, much more. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the show. Has building relationships always been kind of natural to you? And so, kind of same. Usually I'm pretty easygoing with most people, but one of the main things you kind of see is we're kind of hitting peak levels of both insecurity and loneliness in the students that we're teaching, and progressively younger. So how would you kind of advise or assist students that have social anxiety? What does that lane kind of look like of if you were in the classroom full time, you see your kids who are struggling, anxious, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so I heard Dr. Jody Carrington speak. I've heard her speak a few times, and she always makes this comment about how no matter who it is, whether it's your partner, a friend, a colleague, a student, you light up when you see them. And I've been trying, I think I'm good at that. I've tried to make it a habit. And one of my friends, actually, Catherine, who I work with, she was like, I thought you used to just get that excited to see me. And she's like, now I'm realizing you get that way for but I am genuinely, I'm a pure Gemini. Sometimes I'm they have a split personality.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'm oh my God, I love people so much. And then other times oh, I hate people, just leave me alone. But 98% of the time I love people, and I like to light up when I see them because that's how I actually feel. I want them to feel I care about them. Yeah. And so with my students, I would just go out of my way to build their confidence. Build confidence, build positive reinforcement, complimenting. And I honestly would find that would work. I would have kids who would come in, and some of them, they couldn't speak English and they were so shy and they didn't want to say anything. And then by the end of the year, it was oh my God, can we put the genie back in the bottle a little bit here? Or students who would cry at the drop of a hat, and there's always a time, as as a teacher, where you have to have firm boundaries and you need to have a consequence or, whatever that is. Mm-hmm. But I would say that I've seen the most success with any students in just building them up and being excited to see them and telling them how much I value them.
Especially because we are in such a critical position. Mm-hmm. Literally, as a teacher, it's kind of fundamentally, we're in a position of there is something here with a curriculum that I'm supposed to add to your repertoire of knowledge and skills. So, and even in what you're saying, you're kind of orchestrating potentially 30 extra positive interactions a day, which is going to, I think, compound, if anything, over time for both yourself and your students, because I do think because right now we're kind of creeping into Christmas break a little bit, and everyone's Like their smile is slowly fading.
Yeah.
And I don't know if maybe it's like a weird light at the end of the tunnel thing, but I do just think at this point, one of the reasons that is because it's not school, it's like business for a couple weeks. Yeah. Like before a break, it's like, no, I need this marking done. We have to do this assessment. Like we're not really we're kind of going through the motions to get it done rather than like, we're here to try to learn from each other kind of thing. Do you like thinking back on like when you're kind of more full time, is that kind of accurate for that?
Yeah, like there were definitely times where it's like, I mean, there's like the little things grate on you after a while, and I wasn't always my best self.
Grate on you, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah,
I wasn't always my best self every single
day. And no one is, and like you should never expect that. But
no, and I I certainly don't. But yeah, I think that there is a time when, the stress kind of kicks in and the anxiety of the deadlines and the assignments, and chasing after people. And it does kind of overshadow like being in the present.
Yes. What is the most stressful part of teaching?
It's fun. So I feel like this is going to be a long-winded answer.
That's okay.
What I hear people say now, because I'm not in the classroom right now, is parents. That in the last 5 years, parents have gotten extraordinarily more demanding or more harassy. I just mean with like emails, like constantly, and like feeling like, well, you should be telling me exactly what's going on with my kid every day. And for me, the hardest thing was because I had really good relationships with parents. I was very lucky.
Is that easier in elementary, you think? I was thinking, because I have 4 blocks and like 140 students, where it's just a little bit like you send your weekly or bi-weekly email, but like you're not really getting that much response. But sorry.
Probably yes, because they definitely like they'll drop their kids at school and they want to see you and they come in and like you have field trips or you need parent help. So I would definitely say that. Just from my experience, that probably it's easier in elementary. But that's all I know.
Yeah,
I don't really have it to compare to. But when you say like you have 4 classes, 100, 20 or 40 kids, and of course it's going to be a lot more difficult. Yeah. And I was at Timberley Public, so I had the pleasure and joy of teaching multiple kids from the same family, which was also lovely, and I could really build and get to know. But I think the hardest thing about teaching is just to be on all the time. And like the kids always understand if you're having a bad day and you communicate that to them. I found if I would be like, you know what, like I'm not having a great day, I feel sad today, or I didn't sleep good, like they were just a little kinder.
Yeah, and especially once the relationships are built.
Exactly.
It's like, it's not first day. You're like, man, I'm just exhausted here. Guys are like, what? Who is
this? You do not say that on the first day. You fake it till you make it on the first day.
Well, actually, so unfortunately, this week I had to put my cat down, and it was very okay. It was very sad.
I have a cat, so I can.
And it's been like 4 years in like our little home, and he's just been there all the time. But anyway, like I came in Wednesday, and I was just like, guys, like I know we had to do that essay there yesterday, but we're gonna do this today. Yeah. We're just gonna take a day. I was like, I lost my little buddy, and everyone was like, Mr. Clark at school. Like, don't even worry about that at all. So but and I do think I don't think the kids are bad. Now, again, that's you're going to have you're going to have the odd kid and you're going to have the odd coworker that you don't like. Like you're going to have people that the idea that everyone's going to get along with you or that you're going to like everyone is just not realistic. What I have noticed, however, is that there does seem to be a bit of distance between like the students don't feel like they're getting that much value out of their learning. Do you kind of agree with that? And like, how would we go about kind of instilling that? Let's kind of close that quick.
I would agree with you. Like, I think that they question how relatable things are to their own life. I think that they have a hard time to make a connection between like, how is this really going to be important to me? Yeah. Tomorrow or next week and I do think that there are issues with outdated curriculum.
Yes.
And some outdated ways of teaching it too. Like I had kids in my class who, as we all have, love hockey or, are in cheer or ride dirt bikes and love Pokemon and Fortnite. Like as much as I could bring in their stuff, to the lesson or to the class, or like I love math and I'm dorky, even though like I can only do up to grade 6 math. So don't even like
Same, so.
think about passing that. But that's why I always joke that I'm the elementary numeracy coordinator. But as much as you can bring that stuff in and let their passions show and make connections to the learning that we're doing through that, like it's like you'll get them every time. But it's different. But I've never taught high school or junior high.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that world's like.
Like, again, literally first, so like I finished my practicum one day.
Yeah, where did you do it again?
Here.
Here.
And then, so I finished it here. It just so happened that the high school teacher here, bless her heart, Gadzella, tore her Achilles tendon like the week I finished. And they're like, hey, are you looking for a job? I was like, yeah. and so it turns out I was like, I am now. And then, so I got in, but literally first day I was teaching 30-1, 30-2, 20, like all grade 11 and 12, and really only 6 years removed from it.
Yeah.
And so I found it difficult to, one, relate it to them. Because I'm like, yes, the Cold War is important, but like they just do not see, and even trying to instill the value within them is arguably the most difficult part, especially in teaching social studies, because everyone thinks that's kind of the fourth most important subject anyway.
Right.
So when you're in a profession that's like defending its integrity and its legitimacy, in a subject that you're defending its integrity and its legitimacy, I think the defending part,
it's a lot of emotional labor.
Well, it's just a lot in terms of it like takes away from the effort you're putting into actually making the subject better. Meaning like I'm spending so much time trying to defend you and motivate you to do this that like we don't actually get to the core important stuff of like actually trying to equip you to be like a better global citizen. But no one sees that as being important. And maybe that is my job to kind of make that seem important to them. But even as you were saying, kind of tailoring it toward them, like I'm currently teaching a 10-2 class. And the whole time, like I've kept it pretty light on them. Because I'm like, they're new to high school. It's like, I find whenever I stand up at the room and talk, it's just...
Yeah.
They're asleep, and like it's been hilarious actually because a couple times I try to do more project-based stuff with them or just like some booklet, which is again, it's the old way of doing it or the old-fashioned way, but I'm kind of like trying to figure out how to make it, one, that they actually learn the content, and two, make it interesting to them. But they all love Fortnite. And I hate myself up to they love it. And I've never played it. But now I'm thinking like, is there a way I could like incorporate Fortnite into my learning? Like why did that not ever come into my knowledge or like my psyche yet to be like, maybe that's a way that I can reach them? Because they're literally telling me every day, Mr. Clark, look at this Fortnite TikTok. And I'm like, I don't care about Fortnite. We're gonna learn about globalization, okay? Like but I don't know why it needs to be so formal kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know. That could be something I look in over Christmas break.
Yeah.
But yeah. So what made you even want to get into teaching? Like, what was it? Like, what was the origin story there?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I have no family members who are teachers. It was kind of just a crapshoot.
Okay.
And so I was like 18 and graduating. My parents were like, so like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, so
and I'm like,
what is kind of the like? What does your family do? Like, if you especially Fort McMurray, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I was born in Fort McMurray.
Yeah.
And to the Dubes, as you know, Shay Dube is a relation of mine. Was my uncle who owned it. No, so I lived here and went to school at St. Paul till grade 7, and then my parents split when I was like 7 years old, so like think grade 3. Yeah. And so I actually went to high school in Drumheller, and then went to University of Lethbridge, did my ed degree, and then came back. And I honestly I volunteered. I took a year off from high school, worked at a drugstore. My parents were not happy about that at all. They're like, if you end up at Value Drug Mart for the rest of your life, so help me. I'm like, I promise I won't. I'm just going to scan sunscreen and lotto tickets for like a year, and then I promise I'll stop.
So why the year off? Like, why do you think that was?
I just felt like I needed a break from school.
Yeah.
Like, I always liked school. I did well in school. Yeah. But I just kind of needed a break. And I guess I just felt a little unsure of what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so I volunteered in this grade 2 class. And I don't even honestly remember. Like, it's not like I did it every day for, 2 weeks or a month. Or like, I think I went in there like a couple times. And I was like, this is cool.
Yeah.
And like, I never wanted to have any kids, like for me personally.
Yeah.
So, but I always loved kids. Like, people say to me all the time, like, you'd be such a good mom. I'm like, yeah, well, that ship has long ago sailed. But also, I just like genuinely love kids. Sometimes I hate them a little bit.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Oh my God. But and so I think I just kind of took a risk and took a chance and went to the University of Lethbridge Ed program. Mm-hmm. And I did well. Like, I did well in my practicums. I had good relationships with my mentors, with the kids. And I didn't really know, like, anybody what to expect when I got out of there. And then you're thrown in the legit battlefield of, and you're like, did anyone teach me any of these things?
Well, and that's because they said there's something about, like, we kind of look at our typical professions as kind of the classic avenues. It's like doctor, lawyer, teacher. Like, those are kind of like the three bases. But they said, like, teaching is the only one where you're just, there's a day. It's literally you go to sleep one night, wake up the next day, and they're like here you go.
And you're like, what, can I? My dad, so when I convocated kind of late because I had done my practicum in New Zealand, and that kind of just pushed it back a little bit late. So anyway, I wasn't convocating till like the next October. Yeah. And my dad was like, and I was working at the golf course. My dad was like, Shannon, like, you really need to find a job. Like, and we joke about this to this day in my family. He'd be like, your job is to get a job. And so I was like, okay. And I didn't want to leave the golf course because I knew once I went into teaching, I just knew it would be overwhelming. I couldn't really explain like why or what because I hadn't had my own classroom. And I resisted that for a long time. And my dad was like, I did not put you through 5 years of university for you to work at the golf course. Yep. And so I was like, okay, fine. So I started interviewing and I remember there was a couple interviews where I just totally sold myself short. One was for junior high. I knew I did not want to work in junior high. One was for French immersion, and I was like...
Were you like self-sabotaging a little bit?
Self-sabotaging, just like, you don't want to hire me. And then,
it's like, I have no idea what any answer to your question.
And then I finally got a job. Anthony Warren hired me, and I started December 1st, so I'd missed that kind of part of that fall.
Okay,
working, which again to Father Dube's, disappointment,
but you know what? You kind of set yourself up well because it's like, you know what?
Got lucky.
No matter how bad these 3 weeks are, we have Christmas break right there. Lucky. Like you're.
So being in those moments, I was just like, man, like don't tell anybody, but like I don't know what to do here. Like how is everyone trusting me to do all these things? I don't understand. One time I sat in the like art room in Timberley in the back crying for like an hour because I was so overwhelmed by what art project I should do. I had no idea. I was like just looking at all the art supplies like I don't know what to do. And I like felt like that it was imperative that my kids, do art. It was never like my passion going in. Yeah. I always was kind of annoyed, like, I have to figure out the art project. But over time, like, I loved doing art with the kids and just doing, like, different, like, I'm not that good at it, but, like, teaching them, giving them different, like, experiences and opportunities. So, anyway, that's kind of how I got into teaching. I just got lucky.
That is a common thread, though, where, like, most teachers that it's like, oh yeah, I studied English and now I'm teaching like grade 3 math and science. It's like, or I did vice versa. Oh, I studied phys ed and now I'm teaching grade 9 social studies. Like it's just, you usually find things you didn't expect to like and that becomes like your thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, and so how did like math kind of end up becoming that thing for you? Because like it was art, but then it's math. Like how did you kind of figure out what your like niche was?
Well, I will say art was more of like, I didn't realize I'd like to teach this and now I do like teaching is a very probably doesn't deserve quite that like slap a picture like okay everybody
let's make this reindeer we're going
it's like okay this brush stroke like I definitely didn't do stuff like that, but I would say for math, like I kind of said earlier, I had joined the division math committee. There used to be a division math
there's committee. A lot of committees so many committees
anymore, and I don't know, like once I kind of learned how to be a better math teacher, because I definitely at first was like, oh my gosh, like, you know, when you teach something and then you learn, like, I wasn't always that strong at fractions. Let's say, still to this day, I joke that I'm not that good at fractions.
Yeah.
But as I taught it and as I did strategies with the kids, it really reinforced like my own number sense or like knowledge or, you know, whatever it is. And I'd be like, okay, now, you know, and then I'd be like, okay, like I can teach them this in this way. And I think it's going to be able to help them connect further, you know, down the road when we do this concept kind of thing. So honestly, I think it was just, I liked using manipulatives with the kids. Like I liked hands-on. I was good at, I honestly don't know.
Well, the hands-on part is like teaching social. It's almost you're kind of ingrained with this like Socratic method of like, okay, we're here to kind of question what it is we think we know, but it's all this like dialogue, discussion back and forth. And then the kids are like, this is the last thing I want to do. And so trying to make it hands-on is probably, I think the more I've decided on this like whole plane of where to pursue a master's degree, I do think it will likely be in the social studies realm. And trying to do that, I think it's what sparks the most interest to me. I mean, God bless the hearts of the sweet admin everywhere who are willing to take on that role, but God help their souls. I hope there's an elevated place in heaven for all of them.
But there's a heaven, yes, I hope they'll all be welcomed in with wide open arms.
Even if they had led horrible lives,
like
we did this to you. But I know that seems to be the area that seems where I can learn the most, because like, have you ever had the desire of being like an admin in like a localized school? Because again, like that is a relationships position, but it seems like one of the main criticisms I've heard is that, but now I see the students at the worst part of their day all the time. So
see, and I've never been in that role, so I don't know. But the answer is no, yes. So there was a time where like forever I was like, I would never do that. Like, now you want to catch me, Dad, and now I'm doing a master's in educational administration and leadership.
Okay,
and that's, to be fair, like that's an opportunity I wanted to take for me to keep some doors open. Just because I don't know what my career is going to look like moving forward.
I think that's healthy though, to not have an expectation of like where it'll go.
But I will say that I have more of a curiosity about trying a VP role if I were ever granted such a privilege than I did before. I think I feel a little bit more ready. And not in the sense, again, not knowing that will ever actually come to fruition. But I think in my own self and in my own other roles of leadership, I've had ATA local president, coordinator role is a division leadership role. I think I feel a little bit more, just like if that happens, then I think it could be like better timing than it was before.
Because it was always assumed to me that like district level positions were kind of what came after you were a principal. Right? But that doesn't seem to be the case. So how does that kind of...
I don't find that to be the case. I guess, let me just think here. I guess from the director up, that's the case.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Down, like under that, no. So like coordinator or... like there's a couple of people with supervisor titles that are still ATA.
Okay,
I would say like that doesn't necessarily mean they had a principal or vice principal role. There was a role division principal. Obviously you had to be a principal.
Yes.
But there are some things that no, but other ones yes.
Well, and so like, I only say because I'll bring up his name because he was talking to me about it on the podcast before.
Chris.
But Chris Organ, he's like, I was a principal for a year, and they're like, you're in charge. He was like, okay, cool. Like, I guess we'll figure this out. And so, do you think, like, how do you think the leadership experience with the district will help you kind of go back into the micro level?
Well, I think how it will help me is, I am very thankful that I've had, just to kind of use the word family, like the macro level. So I've been able to see, the 12 elementary schools kind of big picture. What do they look like? What's going on where? how do I support different, like you kind of said earlier, like cultures or families and groups and staffs of people.
Yep.
And I think that will help me at a micro level because I don't know. I think I'm better at seeing a bit more of the big picture now, which helps if you're like in a micro level, you can think beyond that a little bit. And like, just that I just know I've grown how many people I know and interact with, than even before. So I think that part helps me, and just trusting in myself has been a huge learning thing for me. So I think that will help me at a micro level too. I would have so much to learn. Like there's so much I don't know about the day-to-day of that job.
Yeah, and it does seem, because one of the things I was going to ask you was, like, okay, let's just say you do become VP somewhere else a few years from now. Like if someone else steps in as the ATA local president, what is your advice to that person of how to handle that kind of a responsibility? Because like you said, if someone else, for example, said, oh, if I wanted to be ATA local president, there's so much that I would have to learn and do. So like, what would you kind of advise someone coming into your role to do?
Well, that's, the interesting thing is, if and when that happens, and of course, at some point that will, I get to be past president.
Yeah.
And so sitting as past president gives me an opportunity to share some of the knowledge along the way. Yeah. The local president really does hold a lot of things. Like I'm on every committee, and I do a lot of all of the background, work. So you really get a sense of like how the local's running, and what's the strengths and where does it need its improvements, kind of thing. But I would say to like have that servant leadership in your heart, really. Like you're there to serve members, you're there to serve others, you're there to serve the profession, and it's been an honor really for me to be able to serve the profession in a way that I didn't really understand when I first got into the work. And I think it's important, and I think that anyone who has the privilege to do so should not do it lightly.
And when it comes to, because again, like everything you're saying is like exactly what you would want in the attitude of the person in that role. And so how have you kind of put up boundaries, or maybe like the whole work-life balance discussion? How have you kind of gone about like separating yourself from that in your own like personal life, if you don't mind sharing?
It's a great question. I don't mind sharing. I think for me at the beginning, I took on a lot of, how do I say this? Like I felt like I had to solve everybody's problems. And whether I could or not was not the point. It was that I felt that way. Yep. And so that wore heavy on me a little bit, because as we all know in education, there's a lot of what I'll call wicked problems. There's not just one solution. There's not just one, it's a system of things. It's
like one solution works for one teacher with one kid.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, what next?
Yeah, it's like so many things. And then I think over time, I actually did start to learn more about boundaries. I used to think that I had to answer people no matter what time or place it was at. So I've gotten a little bit more guarded, like with my phone number, who I'll give that to. Okay. I'll always talk to any member. Obviously, that's my job. I'm happy to, but I have to do it a little bit more like on, like... And for the record, our members are not high maintenance. Okay. Like, they are really not.
Really? Okay.
No. They're
not, I said really in a way that I think they are, but I'm just wondering, I guess you assume like every local would have the same level of high maintenance.
There's some level of...
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
But for the most part, like people are really good and they're respectful. But I think for me, it was just more of like personally, I had to just be like, okay, I can't fix that and teachers don't like, some teachers don't like to have hard conversations involving sticking up for themselves. And so I've had to, I just really try to encourage people to, in a way that's comfortable for them to stand up, to say no, to bring up, X point whatever it is. It could be a million things.
We are an agreeable bunch.
Yes, we are an agreeable bunch. Yes.
If you don't mind, are there any examples of things that, what are the things they're not willing to stick up for themselves in?
Sometimes it's around their time. They want someone maybe to come and say for them, no, maybe I'm just making this up. Maybe the assignable hours are getting high, and there's a time when the local has to step in for that stuff too. We don't expect members to do oh, sorry, you're on your own, But just sometimes little things that feel really big. I can't even think of a certain. But I've been a listener over the years, really more than anything, to when it comes to members on a face-to-face or ear-to-ear level, and encouraging them, trust yourself, use your voice, you can say no, you can do this. But that's only in my own growth, and that I've been able to do that in myself now, that I can say that to others.
Well, yeah, because there's definitely and this is across the board, I think I have a few, especially some of the younger teachers, there's definitely the pressure to be a yes man or a yes person and just say, you know what, this is just the job. We just gotta pull up our bootstraps. If I'm here till 10 every night, so be it.
Yeah,
this is what I signed up for. Yeah. But that seems like just a part of the culture in general, that there is. But at the end of the day, you also want to be there serving the kids and trying to do your best for them.
But not at the expense of yourself. I always something I learned is am I abandoning myself? And I'm not really referring to that in my professional work.
Yep.
That's a question I had to ask myself in my personal life.
Yep.
But if your job is coming at the expense of yourself, then you do have to check in with yourself, ask yourself some questions, figure out for you, how do I work on me so that I'm able to know when enough is enough, kind of thing.
Well, because I always joke with people, and so I even talked to Tim Coates, who was teaching. He formulated the diploma exam for social studies for 15 years, and he taught social for 40 years. And I said, I always find it funny trying to think what did I used to think about? What did I used to do that wasn't, because it seems even I'll be in the shower washing my hair, and it's oh, that'd be a good idea for how to teach that concept. It's just always kind of with you.
Yep.
And do you find the more that you've kind of gone through it and placed those boundaries, you kind of have that kind of, I don't want to say like a cheesy old version of yourself kind of coming back up, but is that kind of what that is like? Would you kind of agree with that, or is that kind of your experience? Or do you even know what I mean? I don't even know what I mean in terms of I used to be so into sports and watching all that kind of stuff, but I've kind of just dismissed a lot of that because I'm oh, I'm a teacher now. This is what I think about. This is what I do. But I almost think I'm starting to walk that back a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time to answer that.
Well, so do you do any sort of work in the summer or over breaks? Are
Absolutely.
you?
No.
Well, that's good. And so what was I gonna ask you then? But anyway, I only got one more question to ask you, Miss Dube. There's a quote that I usually end off every episode with, and it's, "Education is what remains once we forget everything that we learned in school." What is it that you want your students to take away from their experience with you specifically compared to having Mr. Clark or insert other teacher here?
I think that they know I'll always be excited to see them, and that I believe in them no matter what they do. So I was at the career fair for the division a couple weeks ago, and I saw tons of my students from McTavish. They're at McTavish now, but I taught them at Timberley. And there are these huge, massive men now, and they came up and hugged me.
Oh yeah,
Miss Dube, it's so good to see you. I still remember your class.
Yeah.
They don't remember that I was good at teaching them place value. They just remember how they felt in my class, and they remember that I trusted them to do their best, and that I believed, in their specific strengths to themselves. And actually one of the kids goes to this school, and he's now on student advisory council. And the admin team here, they were like, oh, you know, like he applied, but like he's not your like typical. We're like, no, it's great, it's awesome, we want him. And he showed up in like a button-up shirt, and he was like, Miss Dube was my grade 3 teacher. And like it was just so adorable. And like that makes me that's the part that I miss and love about being in the classroom, is like when you can just see them, like what you try so hard to instill in them, which is their own belief in themselves and their own confidence in themselves, when you see like little moments where they start to grow it for themselves.
Like you embedded yourself in a positive way in their story, which is kind of what we're all going for.
Kind of the point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So I would say that's the thing.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello again, everyone. Just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to listen to our conversation here today. If there are any issues with professional conduct and or you would like to share your own story, experience, or have something you would like to contribute to the show, please reach out at mrclark@gmail.com or send a direct message on Instagram to @mrclark.afterdark. Hope you all enjoyed, potentially found something of use, and of course, please do not forget to subscribe. See you next time, unless you're scared.